Hello there, my name is McHorse, and welcome to Blockbuster 2.0 changelog video. Today should be the 26th of June, if I didn't delay the video. On same date I released the first ever version of Blockbuster Mod 1.0. 4 years has passed, and so many awesome features were added, and so many cool videos were made during these years. I would like to thank my parents. Please don't ask in the comments whether they're horses as well. HerjunoVA, who is the original creator of Mockup Mod, and allowed me to use the source code of Mockup for first versions of Blockbuster Mod. My present and past patrons, my dev build testers, who helped significantly shape this update by thorough testing and providing feedback, and you, guys, who are using my mods now to create new things. Thank you very much. Without further ado, let's get into it. As with all mods in this huge update, Blockbuster's configuration options moved from Mod Options menu to McLib's configuration menu. There are also 2 new mod options which were added. First one is Add Utility Blocks option, which allows adding special blocks that are usually can be acquired through commands, that is command block, structure block and barrier, into Blockbuster's creative tabs for convenience. And the second option is pretty straightforward. It simply disables writing when you right click on the actor. That was only introduction. Let's get into major features. The major feature of this update is Snowstorm morph, which is basically Particle Morph 2.0. This new particle system was sponsored by Spark Squared, and it is based off Minecraft Bedrock Edition's particle specification. With this system, you can create custom particle effects. There are so many configurable options there. However, the main restriction of the system is that it doesn't support morphs, only billboards, which are rectangles that are faced toward the camera. You can edit particles in the Snowstorm web editor made by Janice, who also helped quite a lot creating this system. Beside editing particles within Snowstorm web app, you can also edit those within Blockbuster's particle editor GUI. I didn't have time to make a tutorial about it, since it's a really complex feature to describe, but expect a BB tips video about it somewhere in July. The second major feature, or rather a set of options that make up one major feature, is image morph animations. The first option is color filter. It allows to adjust the color of the image morph. It also allows you to set the opacity of the image. Sadly, due to the way shaders work, it might not be supported by a lot of shaders. Precise crop toggle allows to make image morph fit in its bounds, instead of being cropped at specific place where it would be relative to an old size. Coordinate shift options allow to shift the UV coordinates of the image morph. This allows to slide the image horizontally and vertically. Beside coordinate shift, there is also coordinate rotation, which allows to rotate image within image morph's rectangle around the center on the Z-axis. And finally, the last option, before grand reveal, is image morph transformations. It works in the same manner as pose transformations that support translate, scale and rotation. The coolest part of all these new features combined is that those can be used with image animations, which works exactly the same way as animated poses. If you're not familiar with animated poses, see the tutorial in the top right corner. Specifically, crop options, color, coordinate X, Y and rotation, and transforms work with image animations. Experiment with this feature. There are many applications. Facial expressions, HUD animations, etc. Next major thing is partial LittleTiles compatibility. Thanks to help from Creative MD, actors now can open LittleTiles doors. However, you have to follow some rules. Make sure you disable damage control before recording. It's the feature that's responsible for restoring blocks and removing new entities, and install the latest version of LittleTiles, specifically pre-199.34. See the link in the description. Record the actor, and play back the scene. It should work with both fake player option and actors. If the door doesn't open or close, this means you forgot to disable damage control. Check that if disabled, replace the door, and play back again. A little addition has been made to recording system. Now when you'll record new actors, Blockbuster will record players' interactions with entities. This means you can now record also right-clicking entities. Make sure that fake player option is enabled for this action to work, as they require a real player interaction. And the final major feature is dim chroma blocks. Those are exactly like chroma blocks, however, they don't glow. This variant could make it easier to key the background with shaders, as default chroma blocks will bloom the picture. Now let's get into minor features and feature options. First option is local rotation for old particle morph, which allows to spawn particles along body parts orientation. By default, it's enabled. However, you can disable it, which will make particles spawn relative to the world. Next option is keying option for image and custom model morphs. What it does is allow you to cut out the background, which allows to capture transparency where that image or custom model morphs are drawn behind other objects. However, for that, you need to enable new Minima's screenshot alpha option. Once it's enabled, you can take a screenshot, and you'll see no pixels where these models were. This is really useful for compositing and thumbnail creation. Sadly, this feature doesn't work with shaders straight off the bat, so you would need to contact the shader developer to support passing of the alpha channel. See the BB tips video in the top right corner for more information about this feature. In 1.6.3, I introduced scenes. Sadly, it didn't work with record button, and so I suggested to use the recording keybind instead. However, I fixed the record button to work with scenes in this update. Beside that, I also added scene command, which works similarly to director command. And the last minor feature is record fill command. Let's say you recorded 2 actors. One of them appears to be doing something earlier than it should, so you want to add a pause. First you need to find out at which tick you want to add a pause. I want to add it where Alex looks briefly at Steve, which is tick 68, in my case. And now we also need to find the duration, or for how long it will pause. In my case, I need it to pause Alex until tick 177. Here is the syntax of the command. If we'll subtract the start tick from end tick, we'll get the duration. So specify the duration, which is 109, and the starting tick, which is 68. I used commander mod here to avoid doing calculations in my head. So if we'll replay it, Alex will pause from tick 68 till tick 177, and will resume the acting. You can also use this command to prolong the scene instead of using record prolong command. Now we're starting with GUI tweaks. If you noticed, I haven't used the playback button to sync the camera with actors. This is done with a new feature, which lets you pick a scene, or director block, for syncing with camera editor through the scenes panel, using edit camera button. It works exactly the same way, however, if you'll need to detach it, you'll have to use detach scene button in the camera options. If you're holding a playback button, camera syncing mechanism will use the scene, or director block, from the hold button, rather than the scene that was attached using edit camera button. Player recording editor got lots of nice tweaks. If you'll press F9 key, you'll see there are new keybinds added to player recording editor category. If you'll press Ctrl+L, it would toggle the player recording list. If you'll press Ctrl+E, it would toggle the player recording editor. Next, let's add some random action. You can use buttons on the left side of the editor to cut, copy and paste actions. These buttons should be more or less self-explanatory. There is also Ctrl+M keybind, which allows to add a morph action, since it's most commonly used. And finally, you can now horizontally zoom by holding Alt while scrolling the mouse wheel, and also vertically scroll by holding Shift while scrolling the mouse wheel. In custom model morph, the layout has been changed. There is no more dedicated pose editor. Pick model and scales are now located in the pose panel. The poses provided by the model are picked here as well as before. However, if you want to set up a custom pose, you'll need to click Create Pose button, and then you can set up pose here like in the dedicated pose editor before. The Pick Skin button was moved to Materials panel. If you want to choose one of the provided poses by the model, reset the pose, and you can choose a provided pose again. BB Gun's GUI was slightly tweaked. First panel was left unchanged. Projectile and impact panels were compacted. And finally, transformations panel was drastically improved. I added previews for both gun and projectile transformations, which lets you to adjust these transformations much easier. The green line shows in which direction the projectile will be headed when flying forward. Meanwhile, the gun transformations preview lets you to set up the item transformations even without going into F5 frontal perspective. Let's compare. See, it's the same thing. I also added vanish delay option to BB gun, which allows you to delay vanishing of the projectile. You specify delay in ticks, as with any timing option in BB gun. And the last, but not least, tweak in this video is that all pick morph buttons were replaced with pick/edit buttons, which allows you either pick the morph from the morph picker, or go directly to morph editor screen. These buttons also add 2 keybinds to quickly enter the morph menu. Press P to pick a morph, and E to edit the morph. And finally, here is some important fix done to structure morph. Before 2.0, you couldn't save very big structures due to NBT tag size limitation. The game would have kicked you from the world. This was fixed in this update. For reference, 32 cubed is the biggest structure that can be saved in Minecraft. If you still get kicked from the game, go to another world, and increase drastically max packet size by adding extra 4 or 7 zeros at the end. That's pretty much it, guys. There are of course more than a dozen of fixes were made, and maybe another dozen tweaks, but they aren't as interesting to showcase. If what, feel free to check out the full change log, to which link can be found in the description. I really hope this update will expand boundaries of what is possible, and at the same time it will ease creation of Minecraft machinimas and cinematic roleplays. I know it will be hard at first to adapt to all these new changes, but trust me, it's worth it. Make sure to check out other changelog videos for these mod updates in the playlist on the right. This update was 4 months in development, so thanks for watching, and I'm going to modding hibernation.